If you look at Ukraine, it's a factory all the time. We have no slack in our industrial base. We have no slack in our systems. We're great at building, like thinking about the platforms, but when you go down to the trinkets, where do you get all the suppliers that give you motors and give you batteries and give you all of that stuff?
What was it like growing up in Taiwan in the 60s and 70s?
No, Taiwan has a geography, if you look at it. It's not an easy island to go take over. I would say it's going to be pretty bloody if something happens. I think the Taiwanese have a challenge of making sure their society is resilient and is actually focused on some of these potential security issues. On the other side, the Chinese also might need to really spend a lot of calories on actually trying to conquer Taiwan. This is the generation that fought and won democracy, and they don't want it to be lost.
Today's guest is a deep tech investor with a focus on maritime and the space domains. She started her career as an intelligence officer in the US Navy, then a banker for JP Morgan, investing in startups. She founded a B2B aviation parts startup and then spent 12 years as director of unmanned systems at Northrop Grumman. She's currently the managing director of CapZone Impact Investments, co-founder and co-president of Wharton Aerospace, and also an investor in Syndicate 708 and Paperjet Ventures. Please welcome my friend, Ellen Chang. I was talking to somebody today. He used the analogy that the war in Ukraine is like the Spanish Civil War. It is literally the precursor for how technology will be used in World War II. I was like, I have never thought of it like that.
I never thought of that too. He's probably pretty close.
It's
Spanish
pretty interesting.
Civil War. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, like all the things the Germans tested in the Spanish Civil War, like they ended up deploying in mass.
We need to act like Ukraine's precursor. In fact, I was thinking about that a little bit, about how our model needs to change, because if you look at Ukraine, it's a factory all the time.
Totally.
It's not, here, we're going to design something and then move forward.
Yeah.
And then they shift again. And I don't know who the brains behind all of that is, but the enablement is people constantly changing. Maybe even the operators are also building, right? So I don't know how we want to think about that, but I think
they've decentralized a lot of purchasing power down to like at the lower levels.
They do.
So they can have it almost be like a laboratory. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we're getting some signs that like, O6s can buy stuff. But at what point does the bureaucracy fight back on some of this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When you talk to people outside of defense and you explain to them how like the DoD, like basically their budget is just kind of locked in and they don't have a lot of flexibility, they're usually like incredulous is what I found. They're like, no way. I'm like, yeah, they actually have no money to spend. Like you have to go find money.
Yeah.
And they're like, how is that possible? The budget's so big.
Well, it's actually managed in 5 to 15 million increments every prep. I think Eric Lofgren, who now works for Senator Wicker, had done this analysis when he had an acquisition talk podcast. And his analysis showed that the average PE line had maybe 5 million in it, maybe more, but break $900 billion down into that. And that's how Congress wants to manage everything. And I think it causes a lot of overhead.
Yeah. I mean, it also is kind of how the sausage is made and why if you're a defense company, getting a lobbyist is so important, right?
Mm-hmm. Playing the game, playing the education game.
Yeah.
Opening people's eyes into how other things can be done, or how things can be done differently. The lobbying game must be played because the large primes do put a lot of money into that. I think I work somewhat in the maritime space right now, and we learned that I think General Dynamics has 75 lawyers on payroll, but I could be wrong, right? Like
lawyers or lobbyists.
This is going out into public. I could be wrong.
Yeah. No, is it lawyers or lobbyists?
It was lawyers. But the lawyers are lobbyists. I mean, I think the proxy was
interesting.
Not lawyers for defending their contracts, but lawyers for understanding how to lobby and do the legal side of the NDAA.
I mean, that's my big concern with a lot of startups that I talk to. they don't understand how important it is, like that your first hire should be a lobbyist.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad Trey Stevens from Anduril is actually now saying that publicly.
Oh, that's great.
Like their first hire was a lobbyist because that's how the sausage is actually made.
Yeah. That brings up Dan Wong's book, Breakneck.
Great book. Just finished it.
He was he was looking at China and us and like their engineers and we're lawyers.
Exactly. It's literally like we lost all our engineering state in the 60s to the lawyers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although there's a slight slimmer of hope. I sometimes watch Chinese shows just on YouTube. They pop up and I'm like looking at them. There's this one it's on Netflix and it's all about Chinese kids becoming lawyers. Like I'm like, there we go.
All right. I know what I'm watching over Christmas break.
They're going to adopt our stuff.
Yeah, exactly. At a certain point, everyone wants to just defend the status quo, right? So
exactly.
Yeah. All right. So Ellen, that's a great sequence into who you are and what do you do?
I'll wind back. So I mentioned China or Chinese YouTubes. The reason I understand that is I grew up in Taiwan. I was born in the States in Michigan. We were, my mom's side is Polish migrant farmers. And dad came over from Taiwan and met mom and voila, we have a family. I brought me back to Taiwan, or he did reverse migration early. So a lot of Taiwanese went back to Taiwan in the 80s. Mm-hmm. He did so in the 60s. And so when I was 4 years old, we moved to Taiwan and I ended up growing there. I went to Chinese school and then I went to American school. So I have this background that's both cultures and then later came to the States for college. And that's to pay for college. I joined the Navy. So I have this background in the Navy where I spent my first 8.5 years as a naval intelligence officer floating around in the big bad, I guess, Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
Back at the time, it was the Soviet Union. Now it's China is rising over there. And then later on, let's see, I finished my naval career as a reservist. I did intelligence, mostly based in San Diego here. But on the flip side, in parallel, when you're a reservist, you have a day job. So my experience there was to get out of the Navy, I went and got an MBA. That was my bridge. I went into banking for a little bit before getting recalled. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden I'm back in the Navy, working 9/11. This is post 9/11. That takes me to my next chapter, which after the end of that, I joined Northrop here into the unmanned systems side. So that's where I get a lot of experience with large systems, program management, working with the primes have a different perch in terms of working with the government. So we work with the Air Force and built the Global Hawk and the different variants. And so I get some experience there from the autonomous system side. We call them unmanned systems. Mm-hmm. And then left them in literally 10 years ago. I saw drones rising. There was 3D robotics back then.
Yeah.
DJI wasn't even started. And we were trying to, I think some of the larger companies were trying to get into drones and I just didn't see that happening. So I ended up leaving Northrop Grumman and getting involved in all kinds of startups and try to pepper and learn a little bit about investing. So there's an investment streak here. I ended up moving a little bit into space too, because I was working space tech with Northrop and ended up starting an aerospace accelerator. Mm-hmm. So that really brought me front and center with startups. In 2018, my journey in startups and hardware startups put me in touch with Pete Newell through a mutual friend of ours, Marin Cantonar, who's out near MIT. And it was those paths drew me into BMNT. So I spent 6 years with BMNT, working with the government, defense innovation, how to help government think about their problems, be more problem-oriented. And that really helped me understand how the program offices are built. Mm-hmm. Steve Blank is an advisor. He's now posting and I think publishing a PEO guide.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it's like literally hundreds of pages. And so it's that group that helped spawn a lot of the defense tech foundation and revolution. And from there, I was searching for long-term capital because a lot of our startups need capital that stays committed for a long time. Mm-hmm. And through my 10 years, a lot of times that doesn't happen or it's hard to find those types of investors. So lo and behold, in 23, I met Al Pahala, who's in founded CapZone Impact Investments. It's an opportunity zone fund investment, very niche.
Yep.
But that's where I'm at right now. And it was because of the long-term capital that I'm there. And what we try to do is marry this opportunity zone structure with the reindustrialization. So manufacturing, infrastructure, shipyards, which we own one right now. And that's where we are.
So, okay, a lot of exciting adventures along the way here.
A lot of circuitous movement here.
Why don't we start at the back and move forward? What was it like growing up in Taiwan in the 60s and 70s?
It was fairly free. So I went to Chinese school, and so Taiwan at the time was just coming up. China was hardly even there in that they were kind of blocked off from the world, as I recall it. And Taiwan was integrating from a commercial perspective. Taiwan still had the thought of trying to reconquer China, et cetera. But to me, I was such a young kid, I really didn't understand all of that. If I were to reflect, the society was simple to me. And so I'm a hybrid. I'm not fully Taiwanese. I'm like American. I was American there. And so a lot of the internal political movements, as well as, I guess, society developments, really, I felt like I'm not part of that group.
Yeah.
But the observations are that Taiwan ended up moving very quickly from a commercial perspective to be able to grow and become economically prosperous. And that was a very different experience than what China was going through. And you flip till now, the Taiwanese had gone into China starting in the 80s and enabling and teaching and coaching and building up manufacturing. And then probably, I would say, if you read literature, probably 6 or 7 years ago, they were starting to be, I guess, the Chinese were saying, well, we got it now. Like, we don't need you anymore. And so a lot of the Taiwanese started going back to Taiwan. I think the previous president, Tsai Ing-wen, had some initiatives towards moving Taiwanese companies into Southeast Asia, helping the Philippines, helping Vietnam grow, because the country is still very much export oriented. So that's what I recall from that time frame. From a U.S. perspective, though, the U.S. military was in Taiwan, and then later they left. In 76, I think, the recognition of China. And I think that was a big challenge for Taiwan to learn how to continue to survive when China became officially recognized. And I think that's where we have this U.S. relationship with Taiwan that's very different than all the other countries.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have an official embassy.
No official embassy, but it's pretty big there.
Yeah, it's very big. Okay, so what's interesting is, like, when last time I was in Taiwan, we were talking to a bunch of different manufacturers, and a lot of them actually had facilities in China. And they were kind of saying there's almost like a reshoring of manufacturing, where they're like, yeah, we had small factories here, mid-sized factories, but then we did everything in Shenzhen or Guangdong, right? And Guangdong. And then they're like right around COVID time, everybody started basically reopening factories here, both from like the geopolitical side, but also because no one could get into China for like 2 years.
Right.
And it's almost like that has sped up some of the decoupling. Where do you think the country is today with like this whole idea of reunification? I mean, are they still pretty split 50-50, or is it like, no, we're Taiwanese and we don't want to be a part of China? Like, what do you think?
I think it's fairly split, and one can't tell if it's a little bit of the two parties trying to just vie for leadership, or if it's actually within the society, or at least I can't tell. What I hear people say is that there's generational divides. There's definitely the equivalent of our baby boomer generation is very much, of the either reunification, or we are, Chinese Taiwanese. It's a complex matter whether you're Taiwanese Chinese or Chinese Taiwanese, et cetera. So there's that generation, but the generation that has grown up in Taiwan really feels Taiwanese. They don't, yes, they're Chinese, but they're Taiwanese. They understand a democracy. The challenge, a lot of those folks do have experience in China. They speak the same language, very, very similar cultures. A lot of the entertainment folks market to across the whole APAC region. It's not even just China. And so the media tends to blend experiences for the population, or at least the younger generations coming up. So I think a lot of folks have very complex feelings about this. I think from a society perspective, they really see themselves as kind of, they're Taiwanese, but they go to China and it's similar. You can speak the same language. On the other side, you do have groups that are very concerned about the lack of freedom in China, and they don't want to lose their democracy.
Yeah. When you talk to Ukrainians, they'll tell you that they didn't even really call themselves Ukrainians until 2014. Called themselves Russians. And it wasn't until they felt like Russia came and invaded their sovereignty that it actually galvanized a collective identity. Do you see any of that happening now in Taiwan?
I do see that. I think it's pockets, and you just start to see civil resilience or groups popping up. Some folks going back to Taiwan from different areas of the world, U.S., Hong Kong, Singapore, to show a cohesion with the local population, because they are that population. I mean, they're extension of Taiwan. Their parents might have moved out off the island in order to find different and better opportunities. A generation ago, and now that the opportunities are, the younger generation has opportunities either internationally and or on the island. I think there's definitely recognition that they want to retain freedom.
Yeah.
There is a generation pass down too. I mean, I see, even though I grew up in Taiwan, the last 30 years, I didn't live there. I'm very much American, joined the Navy, right? But when I started going back 3 years ago in 22, I got immersed into relearning what Taiwan is. And it's very different from my experience growing up, because I was interfacing with, and even learning concepts of, the second generation. So there's a whole Dai generation that is taking over from their the patriarchs that founded companies that are big, like Far Eastern, or Formosa Plastics. Like their second generation is taken over or has taken over. Foxconn's massive. A bunch of these IT companies are pretty large, and so I find that some of that generation, or a lot of that generation, has been educated and schooled here in the States, and so they have an affiliation with the U.S. They probably are dual citizenship, and so you do see, at least given my background and who's attracted to me, because I have a Navy background, right? Like there's a bunch of Taiwanese Americans who are very much national security minded. So I might be looking through a soda straw just because of my background.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I do learn there's several Taiwanese here in the States who have made it pretty big. Like Silicon Valley is very much full of them. Like the president of YC, or the guy who runs YC, Gary, he's Taiwanese American. He's starting to have cohorts within YC that are, have some national security content in it.
Oh yeah. I was shocked when I started seeing that 6 to 9 months ago.
I heard the Army gave them a contract of some sort.
Interesting.
We should pull that thread.
Yeah.
Confirm that. But
I think I have a call with them coming up, so I will pull that thread. Okay, so where do you think we are today? Do you think there's an invasion is possible? Do you think it's just, she feeding the nationalists red meat here and it's not going to happen? I mean, where do you think we are in the world with the saber rattling?
I think it's possible. I think there's saber rattling, however. I think, Taiwan has a geography, if you look at it, it's not an easy island to go take over. I would say it's going to be pretty bloody if something happens. I think the challenge of the Taiwan Strait is surmountable, but it's not going to be easy. And the question is there enough will for the Chinese to really want to sustain an operation for as long as it may or may not take. You know, it might be there's every year there's an exercise that we participate in or help as advisors, and we watch, but called Posheng, Posheng, and you can, you know, there's the Taiwanese exercise and think through this. Now, a lot of how they think is very different than how we think, but you can see that there's challenges that on both sides. I think the Taiwanese have a challenge of making sure their society is resilient and is actually focused on some of these potential security issues. On the other side, the Chinese also might need to really spend a lot of calories on actually trying to conquer Taiwan.
Yeah. So that brings us kind of to, I guess, the topic of drone wars. I mean, you go back to Taiwan quite often. It's been amazing to see the local industry just out of nothing be built in the last 2 years, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like unbelievable. What have you noticed? Like, is it the budget? Is it that's expanded in Taiwan? Is it the concern that a lot of the concerns we just talked about? Where do you think the desire to have that native industry and maybe not being reliant on other folks is coming from?
I think it's a multiplicity of reasons that this is happening. If you think about 3 years ago, I think there was the effort. The Taiwanese were paying great attention to what was happening in Ukraine. In fact, many Taiwanese went over to Ukraine voluntarily to go learn and help. And some of those folks went back to Taiwan and were bringing their insights back. I think the catalyst was under President Tsai Ing-wen. I think, as I understand it, a couple of very wealthy folks in Taiwan were frustrated that the government wasn't paying more attention, the Taiwanese government. And so they voluntarily said, we will provide $100 million or whatever you want to say. I forget the amount. I think it was around $100 million to say we need to, you know, we're Taiwan. We do all this IT stuff. We should be able to build drones. And I think there was an initiation there that sparked a lot of interest and catalyzed a lot of activity and innovation on the island. And not just this one person came in, but there's also the family that owns, bakeries, large, very, very famous company that makes a lot of money, but they even had gotten to drones. They had enough money. So they did. And they just want to give back because they really feel it's part of their legacy. This is the generation that fought and won democracy, and they don't want it to be lost.
Don't miss part 2 of our conversation. Turn on notifications to see the latest updates of our episodes.